Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran, coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds bilateral talks with France's President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak on the margins of G7 Outreach Summit in Italy. Migration, China and artificial intelligence top G7 agenda on the concluding day of talks in Italy. And Ukraine's Defense Minister Rustam Umarov joins NATO defense ministers in Brussels, says long-term necessity of institutional changes and current urgent needs should be addressed. China topped the agenda as G7 leaders held talks in Italy's Puglia on Friday. The leaders will also discuss immigration, a crucial issue for Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who is pushing Europe to help her government curb illegal immigration from Africa. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and French President Emmanuel Macron discussed cooperation in defense, space and education sectors as they met on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Italy. They also reviewed bilateral ties with a focus on the Indo-Pacific roadmap. Prime Minister Modi and President Macron also agreed to expand strategic defense cooperation with an increased focus on Make in India. Prime Minister Modi also met his British counterpart Rishi Sunak on the sidelines of the summit. The Indian Prime Minister also held talks with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. U.S. President Joe Biden and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a 10-year bilateral security agreement on Thursday aimed at bolstering Ukraine's defense against Russia's attack. The deal, signed on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Italy, aims to commit future U.S. governments to support Ukraine. The U.S.-Ukraine security deal is a framework for a long-term effort to help develop Ukraine's outdated armed forces and serve as a step towards Ukraine's eventual NATO membership.
President Zelensky and I have just now signed that agreement between the United States and Ukraine. Our goal is to strengthen Ukraine's credible defense and deterrence capabilities for the long term. The United States is going to help ensure that Ukraine can do both, not by sending American troops to fight in Ukraine, but by providing weapons and ammunition, expanding intelligence sharing, continuing to train brave Ukrainian troops at bases in Europe and the United States, enhancing interoperability between our militaries in line with NATO standards, investing in Ukraine's defense industrial base, so in time, they can supply their own weapons and munitions.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky called the agreement historic. He said it is a bridge toward Ukraine's eventual NATO membership.
It's a truly historic day, and we have signed the strongest agreement between Ukraine and the US since our independence. And this is something that will not only provide security, but also new good jobs for Ukrainians and Americans. The issue of NATO is covered through the text of the agreement, it states that America supports Ukraine's future membership in NATO and recognizes that our security agreement is a bridge to Ukraine's membership in NATO.
Meanwhile, NATO defense ministers are meeting in Brussels for the second day. The ministers of NATO member states had gathered on Thursday to discuss their support for Ukraine. Ukraine's defense minister Rustem Umerov, in a statement, said that urgent needs for more supplies of weapons and ammunition for Ukraine will be discussed at the meeting. Furthermore, the foreign ministers will also discuss a long-term financial package for Ukraine.
We appreciate for your personal leadership, for the NATO partners for our urgent support, and I look forward to discuss with you long-term cooperation models. And I think it will be our last meeting before the Washington summit, which we look forward to have soon on the leadership level, and we will be, of course, touching all the urgent needs and long-term necessity in the institutional changes that is being proposed.
Russia, which has not been invited to the upcoming international conference in Ukraine, has called the gathering futile. The 15th and 16th June meeting in Switzerland is Kyiv's perpetual attempt to reaffirm support for itself against Russia and to count friends. Russia has denounced the meeting and said countries had been pushed to choose sides. US Vice President Kamala Harris, French President Emmanuel Macron, and the leaders of Germany, Italy, the UK, Canada and Japan are among those set to attend it. Whereas China has decided not to participate in the meeting as Ukraine's friend. China, along with Brazil, is pushing a separate peace plan for Ukraine that calls for the participation of both warring parties. Moscow has previously voiced its support for China's efforts to end the conflict. The US's top diplomat in Taiwan warned on Friday that China's provocative actions around Taiwan, Japan and South China Sea could unintentionally spark a broader conflict. Speaking at a press conference, Sandra Aukirk, the outgoing director of the American Institute in Taiwan, emphasized the position of the United States.
The United States is profoundly devoted to a status quo in the Straits and in the region, the broader region, that is one of peace and stability. And that is why we have consistently urged the PRC to avoid coercive or provocative actions.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has returned to the country's legislature building to meet Republicans in his first visit since the riot happened there 3 years ago. Trump met with Republican lawmakers to build unity ahead of the November election. Republicans hope to see Trump beat Biden, extend their current razor-thin 218 to 213 majority in the House, and take control of a Senate that Democrats currently lead 51 to 49. Tesla shareholders have voted to reinstate CEO Elon Musk's pay package worth up to $56 billion. It's the largest pay deal in corporate U.S. history, but was struck down by a judge in January, citing its size. Tony Waterman has more from outside the Tesla factory in Austin, where the vote took place, on what it could mean for India.
As you'd imagine, Elon Musk had a lot of pep in his step when he took the stage at the shareholders meeting held at the Gigafactory right here behind me. He told the crowd that he loved them, and he said that he could grow the company tenfold again, which is an amazing feat and part of the reason why he was eligible for this record-breaking payout. This vote was really a vindication for Musk, who has been battling in the courts to get his due. A judge in Delaware threw out the deal in January. She called it unfathomable, and she also raised concerns about the independence of Tesla's board, which struck the deal with Musk back in 2018. Now, even though shareholders have given their blessing, it does not mean that Musk will automatically get the Tesla shares owed to him. His legal team will first need to convince that very skeptical Delaware judge that nullified the deal to reinstate it. So it could be many, many more months before Musk can exercise the stock options in this deal, if at all. What the vote does do, though, is that it gives Musk a mandate, a permission slip to continue to lead the company the way he sees fit. And he has made it very clear that, at least in part, Tesla's future lies in India. He's been pushing aggressively to expand in the country as sales slump in China. And there have been reports that Tesla could, among other things, invest upwards of $3 billion in a new factory in India. Tony Waterman in Austin, Texas, reporting for DD India.
And still to come on DD India Live. Protesters take to the streets in Brazil against a controversial anti-abortion legislation that puts abortion at par with homicide.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. After a devastating landslide in Papua New Guinea's Enga province, relief assistance from India reached the island nation on Friday. The $1 million aid was received by Papua New Guinea's officials, including Foreign Minister Justin Kachenko and Defense Minister Billy Joseph. India's High Commissioner handed over the material to Foreign Minister Kachenko. He thanked his Indian counterpart Subramaniam Jaishankar for the timely help.
And we thank the Indian government for their partnership with Papua New Guinea, coming in a time of need for our people that are suffering in the Enga province from this natural disaster that has hit our people. We still pray for all those that have been lost.
An Indian Air Force special aircraft carrying the mortal remains of 45 Indian nationals who lost their lives in the tragic fire incident in Kuwait arrived in the southern Indian city of Kochi on Friday. The aircraft carrying mortal remains of the deceased first landed in Kochi, as most of the victims are from Kerala, before proceeding to New Delhi for the victims from the northern states. India's Minister of State for Tourism, Suresh Gopi, and Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan were among those who were present at the Kochi airport. Among the victims, 23 were from Kerala, 7 from Tamil Nadu, 3 from Andhra Pradesh, 4 from Uttar Pradesh, 2 each from Bihar and Odisha, and 1 each from Jharkhand, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Punjab, and West Bengal. India's Minister of State for External Affairs, Kirtivardhan Singh, thanked the government of Kuwait for taking this incident seriously and completing the procedure for identification of the victims so that their mortal remains could be sent to India.
And the Honorable Prime Minister had already spoken to the authorities there, to the Foreign Minister there, and to His Highness the Emir there. And I would like to say my thanks to the authorities that they did all possible, they took all possible measures, and they really fully cooperated in having all the paperwork completed, the identification done in such a short time, because normally this could have taken a week or at least 10 days. But on Prime Minister's insistence, the authorities were very quick about it. They immediately undertook the task of completing the formalities, and we managed to bring back the bodies here as soon as possible.
The Indian minister said that Kuwait assured India that all paperwork regarding insurance and compensation will be done as soon as possible.
Kuwaiti government is taking this incident very seriously, and they're taking all possible steps. They're making inquiries as to how it happened, so that this kind of a tragic incident is never repeated again. And they assured us that they will take all possible steps. They have also assured us that all the paperwork regarding the insurance that is to be paid to the families, the compensation, will be done as immediately as possible. And His Highness has also, from his part, also provided a compensation to the families of the victims who have perished in this tragic incident.
The Reform UK party overtakes British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservatives in an opinion poll. Ahead of Britain's 4th July election, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage declared that his party was the opposition to Labour after an opinion poll showed it had overtaken the Conservatives for the very first time. The survey, which involved 2,211 participants and was carried out on the 12th and 13th of June, revealed that Reform UK garnered 19% support, a 2% increase from their previous standing, while the Conservatives remained unchanged at 18%.
What I will do, if you give me the honour of being your Member of Parliament, I will stand up and fight for people. I will stand up and fight for small businesses against the regulators. I will stand up and fight for people to get their rights. I will stand up and fight to make sure that schools are not poisoning the minds of your children.
The UK's opposition Labour Party has set out its manifesto ahead of the 4th July parliamentary election. The ruling Conservatives accuse Labour of setting a tax trap. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservatives unveiled their manifesto on Tuesday. Ollie Barrett compares the two manifestos.
There are certainly differences between the manifestos of the two major parties. The Labour Party acknowledges that it is going to put up taxes in some areas, for example, extending windfall taxes on oil and gas companies' profits to pay for some of its spending pledges. The Conservatives, in their manifesto, did announce a cut to the national insurance earnings tax, and they accuse Labour of considering and planning to potentially put up taxes if they get into government. That is a characterisation that the Labour Party would deny, but there is certainly a difference between the two parties on taxation policy. When it comes to migration, both parties are pledging to bring down net migration, but in different ways. The Labour Party says that it would scrap the government's planned Rwanda migration scheme. The Conservatives say that they would get planes to Rwanda up into the air after July the 4th with migrants on them to pursue their asylum claims in Rwanda and not in the UK. There are other areas of difference as well, but there are quite a lot of ways in which the parties, according to the polling, the electorate feel are actually quite similar and are playing from the centrist position when it comes to this election. All of the polling suggests that the Labour Party are well set to potentially win a large majority on July the 4th, but the Conservatives insist that the fight is still on. Rishi Sunak, the UK Prime Minister, has the opportunity to look like a leader on the international stage as the G7 summit continues in Italy. The downside for him is that it means for a couple of days he's away from the UK campaign trail. Ollie Barrett in London, reporting for DD India.
South Africa's newly elected parliament convenes on Friday to choose the country's next president. Under South Africa's constitution, the National Assembly must convene within 2 weeks of declaration of election result. The Assembly will then elect its Speaker, Deputy Speaker and the country's President. President Cyril Ramaphosa, the ANC leader, is likely to win a new term in office as the party has the largest number of seats. The African National Congress lost its majority for the first time since the 1994 election this year. The results have led to speculation as to who will join the ANC in government and the policies they will pursue. And now take a look at what else is making news around the world. Protesters took to the streets in Brazil against a controversial anti-abortion legislation that puts abortion at par with homicide. They demanded of the government to abandon the bill as it represses women's rights to terminate their pregnancies in urgent situations. More than 4 tons of illegal drugs were burnt by authorities in Cambodia on Friday. The drugs had been seized over the past 3 years and contained cocaine and dry marijuana. Founded by a 24-year-old resident, the Chess in the City initiative in a refugee camp in Congo provides a peaceful getaway for children affected by war. The games allow kids to engage their minds away from an unending conflict. Inmates of 16 prisons in Venezuela went on strike against poor living conditions and delayed trials. In the meantime, Julio Zerpa was appointed as new penitentiary affairs head of the country. A year after an Egyptian migrant boat capsized in the Mediterranean Sea, there has been no clarity about the causes of the accident and the missing passengers. While various inquiries are underway, victims' families are hoping for a quick closure. To sports news now, Germany begins its quest for a first major title in a decade as the Euro 2024 hosts plays its Group A opener against Scotland on Friday to kick off the tournament. Germany has won 4 World Cups and 3 European Championships but has faced a series of failures since its 2014 World Cup victory in Brazil. It exited the last Euros in the round of 16. Germany will need to underline those big ambitions against the Scots, who are playing in back-to-back European Championships for the first time since 1996. Meanwhile, Scotland, the clear underdogs, is hoping for an early upset that could help guide it through the group stage for the first time in 11 international tournaments. Rafael Nadal confirmed he will not take part in Wimbledon 2024 championships in order to prepare for the Paris Olympics starting in July. The 38-year-old is a record 14-time winner of the French Open, but he has been far from his best after returning from injuries, and he exited the tournament at Roland Garros. Nadal will team up with Carlos Alcaraz to play in the doubles at the Olympics. The Olympic flame reached the island of Tahiti on Thursday as the Olympic torch relay dazzled onlookers at the beach. Tahiti is the same place that will be hosting Olympic surfing events for Paris 2024 Games. The flame was carried by boat to the surf spot where Olympic surfers will compete for gold when the Summer Games kick off in July. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India Live. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates on the DD India mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code to download it. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.